Hi, my name is Andrew. I'm with Territorial Seed Company. It's the middle of August. It's 90 degrees in this greenhouse, and we are going to start onions for overwintering. Now, people might wonder, what's the benefit to overwintering onions? Well, let me tell you, if you're an onion fan like me, it'll provide you with a continuous supply of onions all year round. Right now, I'm harvesting my main season onions that I planted in the spring, and those will last me through the winter into next spring. And the seeds that I start today, they will be ready for harvest in late spring or early summer of next year, just as the main season harvest is wrapping up. So I'm going to have fresh bulb onions all year round that I grew myself. So overwintering onions can be a little tricky depending on your location. It's definitely worth trying and doing a little trial and error to see what the best planting dates are for your area and whether or not it's possible. So here in the Willamette Valley, we're in zone 8B. Our average minimum temperature is between 15 and 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And bulb onions are generally cold hardy down to about 5 or 10. So that means most years, on average, we're able to overwinter onions outdoors. So over the last years of trialing overwintered onions, we've determined for our area the best time for sowing the seed is right about now, which is the first half of August. But try different sow dates. I would recommend trying late July, early August, and maybe late August. Depending on your area, it could be different. But that's what works best for us, is sowing the seed at the beginning of August and planning on transplanting those onions out into the garden in mid-October, mid to late October, after they're about 8 weeks old. So as I mentioned, growing overwintered bulb onions can be a little tricky, and the trickiness comes in the timing. So what we're trying to achieve is an onion that's about the width of a pencil, and that's pretty good sized at the onset of winter. If it's a little too small going into winter, it can either get frozen out pretty easily, or you will just end up with a really small bulb in the spring after it's come all the way through the winter. If your onion is a little bit too big going into the winter, then that's going to cause it to bolt prematurely when the spring rolls around, because it was just a little bit too far along in its development before it overwintered. Onions are biennials, which means that they will flower on the second year. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to grow the onion starts up to a size where they're big and strong enough to handle the winter, but they're not so big that they're fully mature and that they want to bolt in the spring. And so I would plan to start more onions than you hope to end up with, and expect a little bit of loss. So when we grow overwintering onions, depending on the variety, we can expect a certain percentage of them to bolt, or on any given winter, we may expect a certain percentage of them to freeze out. So where you would want to, say, space your onions at about 6 inches apart, one trick you can do is you can space them double at 3 inches apart, and then wait until the spring, see how well they did, and if they all pull through, then you can thin them out. All right, so it's time to sow the onions. I'm using a 72 cell tray, and what I'm going to shoot for in terms of density is I'm going to try to get between 3 and 5 plants per cell. I find that 3, 4, 5 plants end up sizing up the best for transplant in the winter. They get to the right size. If you have too many, they can be crowded and they come out a little small. So this is kind of the best, most efficient way. So I'm just going to toss, I've got this regular organic seedling mix in the trays. It's not filled up all the way to the top. It's about a 1/4 inch down from the top. And what I'm going to do is just toss about 5 seeds in each cell. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're always going to get a couple that don't germinate. especially if it's exceptionally hot where you are. Germination might be a little bit less reliable, so you might want to seed a little heavy. All right, so the seed's on top of the medium, and I'm just gonna top it with about 1/4 inch of vermiculite. Now, vermiculate's great because it keeps the moisture level real even on top of the seed and helps germination. It keeps bugs down that might live on the soil, and it's great to have and use. If you haven't tried it, I recommend it. If you don't have it, it's no problem. You can just use a little bit more of your seedling mix or even some sifted compost, as long as it's well broken down. So if you don't have the vermiculite, it's fine. Just cover with about 1/4 of an inch more of medium and then water it in and you're good to go. One of the best ways to grow overwintered onions around here, and if you're in areas where it gets even a little colder than it does here, is to grow them in a cold frame or under some tunnels, low tunnels, or I like to grow mine in the hoop house. So this year I'll be starting a bunch of seed and I'll transplant about half of them out into the field outdoors to see how they do with no protection, and then I'll put about half of them inside in the greenhouse, a passively heated greenhouse, and see how they do. But even if you get down to zone 7 or zone 6, you can probably still overwinter onions with protection through the winter. I did trim the onions twice before transplanting, and you want to come in and just give them a little haircut and keep them about 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches tall, and that helps them grow better root systems while they're in the trays and keeps the leaves from laying over and causing issues in the greenhouse with foliar disease and stuff. So you just kind of give them a little haircut a couple of times. You can trim them once right before you transplant them. I'm not going to do that today, but so the first thing I do is I give it a beard trim. Somebody needs a beard trim. Trim it to about 3/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. And you trim the top off. I like to leave a little bit so it continues to dry down. You don't want to cut it too close. You can take off any dirty stuff if there is, but I usually just try to leave it on if there's nothing really bad about it. And then it goes in an onion bag, and you want to hang it in a cool, dry place with place that has a little bit of air circulation, and then it'll give it the best chances of keeping. And you'll just want to check them every once in a while for any of them that go bad. Pull those out. If any of them have thick green necks that didn't dry down well, like you can tell that this one it was kind of in the process of bolting, or if they have any soft spots on them, don't throw them in the bag with the rest of them. They're not going to keep it and they'll just spoil the rest. So just go ahead and eat these first and keep them out of your storage bags. What I have in my hand here's a couple examples. These are Walla Wallas, and Walla Wallas are real sweet onions, and they tend to get these really thick necks. It could have just been a little bit too much nitrogen while they were growing. They're not really good keepers. There's no good way to trim this off and then store it, because you'll have this exposed green end to it. So Walla Wallas, we recommend just trim the root a little bit, and you can hang them and just eat them pretty promptly, like within the next couple of weeks or like a month maybe, because they'll just never really dry down like a regular bulb onion, but they're very sweet and good.